Beloveds, 1 year. We have all been living in a world where genocide is freely funded, is broadcast for 1 year. Spaces like these are important for all of our hearts, all of our movements, all of our bodies and minds and spirits, as we deal with the reality that for 1 year, we have been living within, resisting as much as we can, a genocide. I am the Reverend Ranwa Hamami. My pronouns are they, them. I am a light brown-skinned person of Egyptian and Lebanese descent. I have red glasses on. I'm wearing a black collar with a rainbow collar tab, and I have a keffiyeh wrapped around my head because I was just in the 90-degree heat of San Francisco for an action. One of the words said at one of the things mentioned at that action was, there are no more words. We use our songs, we use our bodies, we use our tears, our primal screams, because there are no more words that we can say. And yet we are still here. And we will still say the words that we have been saying. Because every day, someone's heart is changed. Every day, our hearts need that healing. So in this moment, I invite you to not use words to light your chalice, but to use your breath, to use your power, to use your dreams of what a free and thriving Palestine looks like, of what a free and thriving world looks like. Without a free Palestine, there cannot be a free world. Let us vigil together.
Hello, my name is Elise Ashrawi. I am a Palestinian American woman with wavy brown hair. I'm wearing a black long sleeve shirt with a keffiyeh around my shoulders. 1 year. 1 year and 7+ decades. The list of what we have lost could go on, and it does. And it continues today. The list of souls, thousands and thousands and thousands long, and it isn't over. I'd like to share a video in lieu of my own reflections, naming these losses. In this video, you will hear Palestinian American Fadi Judah sharing his reflections. At the end of his words, I would like to invite us all, as you are willing and able, even on mute, to just join me in saying, we dedicate this space to all that has been taken.
To those whose memory, imagination, and bodies are my memory, imagination, and body. From the collective to the one under the same assault, no matter our location on earth. Our bodies have different ways of knowing, but our bodies know. To the martyrs who witness from above, and the living who witness on the ground. To those who will be killed on the last day of the war. To those who will be killed on the first day after the war ends. To those who succumb in the humanitarian window of horror, an hour before the pause, a minute after. to those who die of a broken heart during and after the war, to those who gather their families to die together so that no survivor suffers survival alone, to those who scatter their families so that they're not all wiped out from the civil record, to the babies whose death certificates marked their brief presence on earth before their birth certificates could be issued. They were not given names. To the elderly who endured 1948 and lived to see their descendants erased. To the young born under the sign of siege and are the only members of their families left, will you stand up and form a small nation? To those who died because dialysis was no longer possible, no water, electricity, and fuel, you were murdered. To those who will develop kidney stones and liver failure from unclean water, to diarrhea, cold, and flu. To those who are maimed and will search for their missing limbs underground, across borders, and won't find their extremities after they find them. To those whose cherubic hearts couldn't handle the shock, and to those whose nicotine hearts blocked the flow, you too were killed. To those who were killed because they refused to leave their homes to live in tents. To those who were killed on their way to the tents, to those who were killed in their tents with the cats they sheltered, to those who were killed in UN shelters and in schools, to those who were killed because they were medics, nurses, doctors, teachers, coders and decoders, and the last honest journalists, to those who thought their biggest fear was to outlive their children, to those who are free of the fear of death because tyranny spoke its final answer and it was total, to those in a concentration camp the size of a metropolis, the only life they knew, to Jerusalem and Jenin, to Jenin and Jerusalem, to the children who played in the craters the bombs made if the sand was right. The bodies we count are not the bodies we retrieve from the river to the sea. And the bodies we retrieve are not always identifiable. To those who guard their dead from the starving dogs of war who are different from the dogs of war that starved them. To those who cannot guard the corpses from rats. To those who rummage through the rubble for clothes, gloves, forks, plates, soap, toothpaste, and wooden furniture to burn for cooking and to keep warm. They will not accept your apology after the genocide, O theology of empire. To diapers, scissors, sanitary pads, to shoes, prenatal care, and onesies, to beards and headscarves, to erased archives that housed centuries, to pulverized libraries, to Saint Porphyrius and the Umari Mosque, and to those who held vigils day and night for a hand sticking out of a crack in the wreckage. Wave to us, can you wave to us, they say, and she does, and it buoys them from the river to the sea.
Do you have the courage to hear our hearts breaking every day, being torn apart? When will you join us in getting free and be what all our people need? Beloveds, I invite you to join me in that song. The words will be in your chat, or just listen. Do you have the courage to hear our hearts breaking every day, being torn apart? When will you join us in getting free and be what all our people need. Do you have the courage to hear our hearts breaking every day, being torn apart? When will you join us in getting free and be what all our people need? Do you have the courage to hear our hearts breaking every day, being torn apart? When will you join us in getting free and be what all our people need? One more time. Do you have the courage to hear our hearts breaking every day, being torn apart? When will you join us in getting free and be what all our people need?
Beloveds, I am the Reverend Samad El-Bayati. I use she, her, he pronouns. And I am coming to you from Southern California. I am Iraqi, and I have long dark hair and dark brown eyes, and I'm wearing a turquoise Islamic blouse. They said something about never again, and then they made close to 1 million human beings homeless in less than 3 weeks. And they killed or maimed, but I didn't know, and nobody told me, and what could I do or say anyway? They said they were victims. They said you were Arabs. They called your apartments and gardens guerrilla strongholds. They called the screaming devastation that they created the rubble. Then they told you to leave, didn't they? Didn't you read the leaflets that they dropped from their hotshot fighter jets? They told you to go. 135,000 Palestinians in Beirut. And why didn't you take the hint? Go. There was the Mediterranean. You could walk into the water and stay there. What was the problem? I didn't know, and nobody told me, and what could I do or say anyway? Yes, I did know it was the money I earned as a poet that paid for the bombs and the planes and the tanks that they used to massacre your family. But I am not an evil person. The people of my country aren't so bad. You can expect but so much from those of us who have to pay taxes and watch American TV. This excerpt was from an amazing poem written by Black activist, poet, and professor June Jordan, and was dedicated to the Palestinian and Lebanese people who lived in Lebanon from 1948 to 1983. But this sounds like a poem that could be written today. See, we have been here before. Over and over again, Western media becomes the talking head in order to allow such devastation to occur in the region referred to as Southwest Asia, North Africa, SWANA for short. Those of us in the diaspora live with the knowledge that our tax dollars fund the killing of our own family members. So please understand that our resilience is connected to their resilience and vice versa. And I believe that it does so for us all, actually. This is why we must seek alternative media, podcasts, and scholars to remind us that what we witness happening is true. That what is told to us by things like mainstream media may be a part of the propaganda machine that keeps this region in perpetual war. The other day, at the United Nations, Netanyahu held up a map. Besides erasing Palestine from this map, it labeled Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran as the curse. For anyone who has known that there has always been a plan to continue colonizing from the Nile to the Euphrates, this should not come as a surprise. Attempts to do this previously have failed. However, scholars tell us that what we are witnessing is its resurrection. The plan to colonize other parts of the Swana region is in full force today. In the midst of all of this, we are still here. We whose Swana ancestors remind us that to survive is resistance and resilience. We are many, and we are still here. We are all still here, no matter how many attempts at our erasure through occupation, colonization, massacres, and war. Through the mass killing and destruction, we are still here. Attempts to reshape history through propaganda, gaslighting, and lies cannot win as long as we do not let it. And as Palestinian professor Noura Erakat has reminded us previously, do not gaslight yourself. That is a good idea. We should not gaslight ourselves. We need to learn to decolonize our own hearts and minds so that when we hear passive language being used to describe the Swana people, we will recognize it as propaganda meant to dehumanize. And to my fellow Swana siblings, let me say this. We are a blessing. We come from ancient civilizations that dreamed us into being. Do not listen to the lies. Do not internalize the language of the colonizer. I repeat, we are a blessing. Just like the Palestinian children in northern Gaza, giving whatever little they had to be sent to help the children of Lebanon. Just as the Lebanese people who welcomed those living on the streets into their stores, in their restaurants, feeding their real need for food, rest, and kindness. And just as baby Aileen is for her parents in Gaza, who overcame fear to see her every day as she lay premature in the hospital of Al-Aqsa. And please know this, that when spontaneous drumming, singing, and dancing occurs, as the people in Gaza witness acts of resistance light up their skies, realizing that they are no longer alone, remember that you and I, too, hold the key to such unbridled joy at a moment's notice. Let these stories continue to remind us that we are still here. Palestinians are still here. Lebanese are still here. The blessings of the Syrians, Yemeni, Iraqis, Iranians, and all the rest of the unnamed people of Swana are still here, no matter how much they want us to disappear. And our beloved drum Swana caucus is still here, and we are growing because our families there and here need us to survive. And as more of us in the diaspora learn how to decolonize our world, maybe we can stop this resurrected plan and bury it for good. Hold on to that. This is the resilience of the Swana people. Our resilience, inspired by thousands of years of survival and dream a better world. And remember that no matter what they do today and tomorrow, as long as we have one another, we will still be here.
I am a white man with graying hair and a blue shirt and kind of clear black rimmed glasses. I'm a Jewish Unitarian Universalist. And if I'm honest with you, I try to hand off this speaking part twice to others, obviously unsuccessfully. I did so not because I'm shy or afraid to speak, or even for a lack of things to say to you, but instead because I struggle right now to name anything from a Jewish point of view, because that's not where my compassion is, or at least it's not where it's been. My focus, as has been said better by everyone else here, has been on ceasefire and an end to occupation and genocide. I haven't had time to, and I haven't wanted to focus on Jewish concerns. And I know that my heart is inaccurately conflating Judaism with Israel right now, which of course is no more true than the lie that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are one and the same. But feelings aren't rational. And I've spent a year feeling unbelievably angry at Judaism. So I wasn't looking forward to Rosh Hashanah services, which took place this past Wednesday evening and Thursday. I knew if I attended services at all, I would do so remotely, as there's nothing where I live in Providence, Rhode Island, that holds these truths that we are learning ever more clearly. My partner and I tried virtually a Boston secular Jewish congregation, one we've attended before, and they began with the centering of Jewish pain. And they lost us right then, in that very moment. So side by side on our sofa, we turned that off and we tuned into Kol Tzedek, an amazing anti-Zionist, I would call it, synagogue in Philadelphia, where both rabbi are not only active and rabbis for ceasefire, but also brilliant liturgists who live the work they preach. Rabbi Ari and Rabbi Mo knew what we all know, that these Jewish high holy days, these days of awe, of repentance and reflection, that they would require much more spiritual excavation than even a usual year asks of us. As Rabbi Ari began to share the drash, a homily of sorts, he started to tear up. And then he started to cry. And then he started to sob before he was able to step and breathe and get a hold of that pain. And everyone waited patiently because we knew that those tears, even in those tears, he was modeling the grief of this time. And when he could speak again, his words feel like much of what we're saying here tonight, that we're still here. We're still here fighting for ceasefire. We're still here in solidarity for a free Palestine. We're still here demanding a right to return Israel out of the West Bank and end occupation. Still here fighting for a release of all political prisoners. Still here mobilizing for an end to US funding of wars in the Middle East. But there was more, especially in that setting of the Jewish High Holy Days. Rivari reminded us that we're still here as Jews needing to work every day towards a free Palestine. As Jews with lineages back hundreds and thousands of years, part of a long and beautiful faith, still here as people struggling internally and with each other to find any common ground, still wondering how to move forward. Again and again, my eyes filled with tears as I began to let down that wall that I built around myself, to begin to drop into the music and the tradition, that remembering that Judaism isn't just the evil of Netanyahu regime, but instead the thousands of years of history of my people. And with that congregation, through the magic of online services such as these, to feel connected back into something that gives me hope, reminds me that we will continue, in the words of Rabbis for Ceasefire, to mourn the dead and to fight like hell for the living. May it be so.
As we gather tonight, we hold space for the immense grief and suffering that has unfolded in the past year. We mourn the killing of over 42,000 Palestinians in Gaza and the hundreds more in the West Bank, casualties of the Israeli military. This violence is not an isolated tragedy. It is enabled by US support, and we must face this truth. As bombs continue to fall on Gaza, wiping out families, schools, mosques, churches, and hospitals, we acknowledge the complicity of those supplying the weapons fueling this devastation. These lives lost are not mere statistics. They are human beings erased by systems of oppression and apartheid. We also grieve for the Palestinian hostages imprisoned without trial, tortured, and held captive by the Israeli military. Their suffering too cries out for justice. The anguish of families waiting for their loved ones' return is shared by Israeli and Palestinian families alike. The trauma endured by captives, regardless of which side they are on, is a human tragedy. Free them all. The violence extends beyond Gaza's borders. The Israeli military's recent attacks in Lebanon have claimed civilian lives, and their escalation threatens to ignite a broader conflict across the region. In Yemen, the US-backed war continues to devastate countless lives. This bloodshed is part of a larger pattern of destruction enabled by those who profit from war and occupation. We grieve too for the over 1,100 Israelis killed in the Hamas-led attack 1 year ago, and for the Israeli hostages still held in Gaza. We remember the families torn apart, the loved ones waiting to hear, waiting in fear and uncertainty. Our hearts cry out for their release. Free them all. We gather because we refuse to accept this reality as permanent. Our tears are enough to grieve every life taken, whether Israeli, Palestinian, Lebanese, or Yemeni. Each death is a world destroyed, a sacred life lost. And it doesn't have to be this way. It still doesn't. To honor the dead, we must also fight for the living. We draw strength from those who, despite their grief and their loss, continue to call for justice. From Israelis and Palestinians who reject the false choice between freedom for one people at the expense of another. From those who believe in a future where every person, regardless of nationality, ethnicity, and faith, can live in peace and dignity. It begins with us, raising our voices against the bombs, against the slaughter, against the occupation and the machinery of death. We commit to a world where never again means never again for anyone, anywhere. Where chains of captivity are broken, whether in Gaza or Israel, where no child lives in fear. No family is torn apart by war, and every life is valued equally. So let us hold the lost in our hearts, renew our commitment to peace, and vow to build a future where freedom is not a privilege of the few, but a right for all. May it be so.
I am hearing my beloveds and my colleagues sharing their reflections, there is a practice that comes out of our Swana communities that holds our grief, our rage, and our joy. And that practice is yugulation or zacharit. I'll do it right now so that folks maybe don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry for my baby next door. It is a sound for grieving, for resisting, for loving, for celebrating, for being unapologetically Arab in whatever moment we are in. And in this moment, where so much has been taken from us, and especially from those of us who are of Swana descent, we have an opportunity to do some reclaiming. So what is it you, all of you here, gathered here to mark 1 year of genocide, but also 1 year of resistance? What is it here that you are choosing to reclaim in this moment? And I will do this one more time. That's for my Swana folks really right now. But what is it that you are choosing to reclaim in this moment as you work to create a free Palestine and end a growing genocide?
Thank you, Renwa, for that just amazingness. My entire house lit up when you did that. Everybody was utilating, and I was like, "What? Like, what's happening downstairs?" So that was brilliant. Um, but I am Devin Dada. I'm a Iraqi American man with dark brown hair and dark brown eyes. I am wearing a light blue Cuban collared button down shirt, and I will be reading a poem which I have called Ode to the Martyr, and I invite you as I read this poem to close your eyes and imagine the words that are being spoken to you. Give me a stone, and I shall place it under my pillow, awaiting the trudging of mechanical men and sweltering eyes. Give me a dove, and I shall ponder its wonder as the sky implodes in the plumes of fire and shadow. Pull me tightly to your bosom, such that I may appear I have never left the womb. Push me into a silent shiver, pelted by my siblings, now a storm of crimson ash. I am the river in the skin of the wadi, the bark splintered in a cold white sand. I am the hair hugging the wali, the palms scented in a warm dusk land. Push me beyond comprehension, gently, such that all may find themselves guilty. Pull me along shredded glass, in that I must bite at the tearing of deceit. Give me a sling, and I shall swing it at wolves, awaiting the trudging of mechanical men and sweltering eyes. Give me a message, and I shall send it your way as the sky implodes in the plumes of fire and shadow. Then when I am thirsty or hungry or have a hole in my chest, you must leave me in pain, swallowing the red before eternal light, and you will say, may we meet again, may we meet again, may we meet again.
Beloveds, my name is Aisha Hauser. I am an Egyptian middle-aged woman with mocha-colored skin and black curly hair with gray streaks. I'm wearing a keffiyeh around my neck and have pink glasses on my face and a pink shirt. I want to share words from the author, Ta-Nehisi Coates, author of the book Between the World and Me. He wrote a new book called The Message, in which he chronicles spending 10 days in Hebron, Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other parts of the occupied Palestinian territories. First, I want to share a sentence when he was interviewed, and the interviewer basically said to Coates, "Is it this inevitable, this idea of domination and empire?" And Coates said, quote, "We have to guard against the temptation to accept that history is necessarily the limit of who we are as human beings." As a part of closing for today, I want to read a passage from this book that just came out, and I highly, highly recommend. And as you listen to Coates's words, I invite you to take them as a charge as we end our time together. Coates writes, as he talks about his trip, "My hosts were both Israeli. As nearly all my guides would be for the second half of my trip, this was a conscious decision. What it was not was an empty declaration to hear both sides. I had no interest in defense of the occupation and what struck me then as segregation. Journalists claiming to hear both sides, as though a binary opposition has been set down by some disinterested God. But it is the journalists themselves who are playing God. It is the journalists who decide which sides are legitimate and which are not, which views shall be considered and which pushed out of the frame. And this power is an extension of the power of other curators of the culture, whose core job is deciding which stories get told and which do not. When you are erased from the argument and purged from the narrative, you do not exist. Thus, the complex of curators is doing more than setting pub dates and greenlighting. They are establishing and monitoring a criterion for humanity. Without this criterion, there can be no oppressive power, because the first duty of racism, sexism, homophobia, and so forth is the framing of who is human and who is not. But there is space beyond the brackets. Coates is doing the sacred work that is the charge of us all. I pray for us all. May we center the truth, even and especially when it is hard. I pray that we center life and transformation and liberation. And I pray every minute of every day for an end to this growing genocide. Put your hands on your hearts, beloved, as you are inspired, and know that we are here together, that more and more people across the globe know the truth of the wrongness of this genocide and the rightness of liberation. Thank you for showing up to this vigil. Thank you for showing up every single day. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Thank you, beloveds.